welcome to another episode of Game Pass Grab Bag, your weekly podcast reviewing games for the Game Pass collection, bringing you three unique perspectives of varying skill range. I am the envoy of this episode, Andrew. With me are one that's disavowed, Keith,
Hello.
and our godlike, Aaron.
Wow. I was
I,
really wondering where you were going to go with that one. I thought you were going to call me like an infected bear or something like that, but I'll take godlike.
I don't know, came on the spot there. But this week we played Avowed by Obsidian Entertainment. Avowed is a first or third person action RPG where you are playing a godlike, which is a person who is touched at birth, given special powers from a god that, unfortunately for you, you are unaware what the god is. And you are tasked as an envoy of the Empire to go to the north to this living lands, which is a place that's being infected by an evil plague that is now taking over the area, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. But yeah, going around. It was whether this is a gamer pass. I will start for this one. So I was very excited that this is Obsidian Entertainment. I gotta say, I think Obsidian is my favorite studio now. Like seeing all their games they've come out with, I'm like, I love every game that they have come out with. Uh, but with all that being said, though, I want to say I think Avowed might be my least favorite Obsidian game, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just to me, I was like playing this. I'm like, this is fun, but I don't know. When I've played other Obsidian games, I'm like, this is awesome. I want more of this. For me, Avowed was fine. It just didn't do too much different. So for me playing it, I was like, yeah, I'm liking this. I'm getting a good time. So this is a game. But yeah, I just this is a good entry level RPG for people who aren't wanting a second job playing an RPG. This is an easy kind of pick up and play kind of RPG. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, this game has been, I don't know, pretty hyped for a while, and I know we've talked about playing it for quite some time. It's been on everybody's mind, and I was excited to play it, and I wouldn't say it disappointed. I think that there's things about it that I'm like not incredibly like, oh my goodness, I need to just keep jumping into more and more gameplay. But overall, I think it's fun. I think it's a beautiful game, and all kind of various other aspects to it. But yeah, I think it's a game for sure.
Yeah, this is a game, and it's unfortunate because it probably could have been like a must play game.
Yeah.
And as we go through this, you're going to hear me say a lot of good things about the game, but none of those good things were groundbreaking things. And you're going to hear me say a lot of bad things, but none of those are game breaking things. So it falls just kind of in this weird middle comfort zone, but it never quite fails and falls flat on its face, and it never quite exceeds what it probably could have exceeded. So it's a game, but it probably misses. What's that phrase? Aim for the moon and you land amongst the stars. It's probably something like that. It's probably something that could have hit the moon, could have been there. Instead, it just turns out to be a pretty good experience, but just not quite.
Instead, they aimed for Jacksonville and they landed there.
All right, I wouldn't say that, but sure.
But anyway, so getting to the story of The Last of Us, you're going into this land where there are mushroom people that are killing each other. Oh, sorry.
You say The Last of Us?
Sorry, I'm sorry. It's a different game with mushroom zombie people.
Oh,
Avowed.
yeah.
So the story of Avowed, you are going and investigating this land that's people are being infested by mushrooms and killing each other. But yeah, so this game takes place in the Pillar of Eternity universe. So if you don't know that, that's one of Obsidian's other RPGs. That is a tactical RPG, as the Pillar of Eternity series. I've played a little bit of them, but never.
There's two of them, right?
I think there's three.
Goodness, those were games that always
looked
like.
Just two. It's Pillar of Eternity and Pillar of Eternity Deadfire.
Those looked heavy RPG, like turn-based heavy RPG. Like it did not look like a game that was going to be up my alley at all. Clearly, this game references. They say Deadfire like 5,000 times in this game. So it clearly references that game a lot, but I wouldn't say you had to have played those games, but did you feel that way, Andrew?
No. So it's definitely one of those things of like, oh, if you know, it'll help you because it's the same universe. It's not like not like the MCU, where it's like, oh, if you miss some Marvel movies, you're not going to understand what's going on here. It's not like that, but there is obviously a lot of context and a lot of context to gods that are in this universe. That each god has like kind of their specialty, and there was one god that specifically attacked Deadfire that they keep referencing. So you don't need to play. And I will say this is one thing that's great about the story. This game has an active codex, so as people are talking, it'll have a highlighted word, and you can press X and look up the glossary and see what that word means. Because a lot of people do speak jargon and just make no sense. But I will say a lot of the dialogue was a lot of context clues, and I'm like, okay, I kind of figure out what this guy's saying. But no, you don't need to play the Pillar of Eternity games. These are very much its own thing, because none of the games took place in the Living Lands. They took place on different continents. So it's not necessary, but you can obviously understand what's going on. But yeah, the story is following the Adirian Empire, where the emperor is sending you up to the northern lands, the Living Lands, because it's rich and full of wonderful things that can benefit the empire. But they heard of this awful thing that's infecting people, so you have to go and figure it out. And since you are what's known as a god-touched person, or a godlike person, which is a person that was selected by a random god or a specific god, and they imbued you with some sort of powers, and you are essentially their vassal. So your character will have these weird, in the character creator, you'll have some weird plant-like features, because that is your god-like power or sign. And you are going here to try to unsolve this, to figure out this mystery of what's going on here. But yeah, as far as the story goes, I gotta say, I liked it, but I wasn't blown away by it.
Yeah, it's all right. So last week we played Eternal Strands, and Eternal Strands to me was a paint by numbers.
Yeah.
This obviously has a lot more depth there, but there was nothing that I saw or encountered that I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of interesting. There are a couple side quest missions that you're like, okay, this is kind of interesting, but it just doesn't go deep enough for it to be like to leave an impact there. And again, this is going to be a theme through this where the game's good. I think the story's good. I think the voice acting is good. I'm not going to remember it though. It's not gonna be something that I come back to and say, man, they really killed it there. I was really captivated by that story. Much like most Obsidian games, the voice acting is pretty decent, but almost an unforgettable cast. Almost.
Yeah.
Like it just keeps, it'll keep you right there. Like there are just things that you're like, gosh, if they just flesh this out a little bit more, if they just added a little bit more depth here, this could stick. Like this could be a huge hit. And the story is just going to be, again, one of those moments where even if as it starts to open up and evolve, it doesn't open up and evolve in places where you're like, oh, I've never been here before. I've never explored this type of idea. So it's just, it's a whole lot of.
I mean, I feel like that's a high bar. The whole like, this is a new idea. I mean, everything is you could just about take any story and wrap it into some other story at this point. Or, you have your archetypes of every story that's going to happen. So I don't know, and I don't know. I think maybe sometimes that's why for me with stories and video games, I'm like, I don't know, they're all just kind of same but different. We joke about it with any farm builder game. It's like, oh, you inherit the farm from your uncle or your grandfather, and it's always kind of always heirs of the same thing. So I guess what I'm saying is I vastly agree with you. Like there's nothing here that I'm like, wow, like all of these characters are so intriguing and awesome. I thought they managed to do some fun things with the dialogue without being funny. And I can always appreciate that. Like the one in particular that stood out to me, it was like one of the first times I had to do some sort of like platforming, and there's like a painted white cloth hanging, and he's like, why would somebody just leave a painted white cloth hanging here? And they just like kind of poke fun at it. Does that make or break a game by any means? No, but I always appreciate those little subtleties. I don't know, that was, I think, probably highlighted for me as like little bits like that.
Here's the problem, and here's where I would kind of push back on that. One, the developer's Obsidian. So yeah, there is kind of a high bar there. That's kind of their pedigree is storytelling. That obviously means something to them. So the bar should be a little bit high for them. This isn't Eternal Strands, which probably has a much smaller development team. You kind of expect them to maybe cut some corners. This is Obsidian Games. This is funded by Microsoft. Two, that is the core of this game. The core of this game is character and dialogue. That is, I would say, just a big part of the connective tissue here. So to just go, well, it wasn't that great. That's the problem. That kind of needed to be part of a hit here because that's just what this game is. We're also going to reference here because it's impossible not to do this. You probably have to reference Skyrim a lot when you do this. And and going into this, I was like, I know it kind of looks like Skyrim, but I doubt it's like Skyrim. And then I played it and I was like, I don't know. This kind of reminds me of when I played Skyrim in a lot of ways. So it's kind of hard to ignore that. I don't know if this does a better job of creating memorable moments than Skyrim did. What was that, 15 years ago at this point? So it's just hard for me to look at the story and say, well, it's not that great, but who cares? It kind of had to be great. That's just what this was supposed to be.
So I'm going to disagree. I don't think you should compare this game as Skyrim. This is what I think is a big factor when it comes to Avowed too, is your mindset going into this game. To me, this is very much like my mindset when I went to Mafia. Like why I wasn't crazy about Mafia because I was expecting a Grand Theft Auto, Mafia game. And I was like, that's not what it was. And that's very much how Avowed is. A lot of people are like, oh, this is the new Skyrim. It's not like Skyrim. It's very much a action RPG, not so much of a heavy RPG like Skyrim.
Hold on.
Criminal system and everything.
I don't know about that, Andrew. I understand what you're saying, but to say that you really can't compare this to Skyrim to me is kind of impossible. That's impossible. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing. Like what's happening is there's a lot of negative comparisons happening there. And that I push against.
Could you compare Mafia to Grand Theft Auto then?
No.
Why?
Because it wasn't an open world.
It was an open world.
I would say if you were to compare Skyrim, it's first person. You can use magic or you can use melee or bows and arrows.
You're describing every fantasy game.
No, not necessarily. They don't always necessarily play that way, but it's got a skill tree. It's got an open world. It's got explorable areas. It's got cities and towns that you can explore. If you were to put these two games side by side, you can easily see these comparisons. At Mafia, you couldn't. It wasn't an open world at all. I think I understand what you're trying to do because right now what's happening is there's just a lot of negative. Like, oh, well, Skyrim did all these things and this game doesn't do that. And I'm not into that discussion. To me, I would look at this game and say that this is Skyrim-esque. I wouldn't necessarily, but you can't not directly compare these things. I think that's kind of impossible. Even the inventory system is very similar.
The
types of things you can pick up.
No. In Skyrim, you literally can pick up wooden spoons, like random junk.
Yeah, I picked up rotten cabbage.
Yeah, because you can cook with it. Yeah, you can cook with it.
Obviously, Aaron, you can cook your rotten cabbage.
I'm to me, this is an accessible game. This is a game that isn't Skyrim. I'm not saying that it is, but I think you're kind of having to really twist this if you're going to say you can't compare these.
Well, okay, this is the thing that I think Avowed does so well. This is, to me, as I've described to some people, this is an every man's RPG. Yes. Anybody could pick this up. Anyone could 100%. Put this down. In Skyrim, I don't know if you've ever played Skyrim recently. If you haven't picked up your file in months, you're like, where am I? What was I doing? In Avowed, that's not the case. In Avowed, I feel like I knew what I was doing, where the story was, what's going on. Everything's just really kind of easy and clean cut. It's also way shorter of an RPG. So this is a way different of an RPG because it's an every man's RPG.
I would agree that this is way more accessible. 100%. I would say that this is something that's way more accessible to just about anybody. So I think that's again where the comparisons kind of differ. Where I think somebody who's going to look at this and be like, oh, Skyrim was better and it did all these things. I I think this is obviously a different game, but to me, if you liked that Skyrim style of RPG, you're gonna like this one too. Like, I don't think you'd immediately be out on it, but I also think the person that hasn't really tried Skyrim or didn't even like Skyrim might actually like this one. I
Yeah.
actually think this one's more accessible, way easier to pick up.
Yeah. But as far as the writing goes, though, the writing's not bad. Okay, I'm probably the farthest out of everyone. I don't know how far you guys are.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
probably are. You
I'm
always
still
are.
like hanging out in the first town. I feel like all I do is run. I feel like all I do is just run around and
Oh, I've been exploring everything because I know there's so many things hidden. I am barely going anywhere. I'm doing a bunch of side quests, but then I'm like, every stinking corner I see, I'm like, I bet I can get up there and get something.
See, I'm kind of sprinting.
Oh, I'm not. I'm checking every corner, every
So
nook and cranny.
I'm in the third area, and I gotta say, the story is picking up way more of like what is going on. I have a feeling I'm gonna really like this game's ending because I do feel like there's a lot of moving pieces that is building up to something. Like the writing is still very good in this game, so it's not that like the writing won't blow you away right away. It is very much kind of paint by numbers, but as things are going on, I'm like, all right, this is pretty cool. I'm liking this. My biggest complaint though with the writing though, I do not care about these companions. That's not a good idea. That's not a good thing for an RPG. A lot
they
of
try to
these-
make you care with like these campfire scenes because you can
Yeah.
have these like heartfelt dialogues with them. But I was
And
just breezing
honestly,
through
I
This
go
most
to
of
the
them.
camp.
This is why I say you kind of can't dismiss that. You kind of can't dismiss that part of that because this is the connective tissue. You know what's the killer? Is who's the lizard? What's the lizard guy's name?
Kai.
Kai.
I'm assuming named
Do you know
after
who
Kai
voices?
Cenat.
Do you know
Garrus.
who? Yeah, it's Garrus from
Mass
Effect.
Effect, yeah.
So again, Mass Effect did an amazing job at connecting you to your companions. And they have missions that are specifically kind of connected to those guys that made it all that much more investing and more interesting. Kind of a bummer it's missed here.
Yeah.
Because that is the bread and butter in this type of game.
Yeah. Because like obviously these RPGs have like companion missions. In his, I just don't care about.
Nope.
It's about following kind of this war buddy he had that died, and it was like a missed love opportunity. And I'm listening to him, I'm like, this makes no sense. Kai has always lived in this island, and this was years ago. And you're going to an area and it's like, hey, my friend had a house here. He told me to pick something up when he died. I just never got around to it. Can we do it? And I'm like, okay. So you do it, and he's like, oh man, this hurts. Oh, this is real sad. And it's like, you've been here for years. Why now are you coming here and telling me, a random stranger, the story? And then, of course, you go to a battlefield and it's like, oh, he saved me here. This means a lot to me. And it's like, once again, why have you not come here? This means so much to you. Why are you now waiting now? Like, there was no reason for
Is
it.
Kai the blue guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, the greenish blue guy.
I don't
Lizard
know.
man.
So I just found it unrealistic where I'm just like, this. They're trying to build this emotional, sad story, but it's like, why didn't he come here if this really meant so much to him?
Yeah. And then, gosh, even when you're, I don't remember any of these guys' name, which is probably part of the problem.
Marius?
Yeah.
I
So
got a feeling you're talking about it.
when you're kind of introduced to him, it's so like,
Super abrupt.
yeah, here he is. He's on your
He
team.
was part of me. It's just like, yeah, I'm joining you now. I'm like, okay, who is this
Correct
guy?
me if I'm wrong. This is another one of those games where dialogue has no.
No, it does a little bit.
Does it?
A little.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I feel like no matter what I picked, ultimately it was just kind of like, all right, well, he's gonna, he's fine, and maybe it was just like that moment in particular. I was like, I don't know. I felt like I could, because I know there are times you can start fights and then avoid fights and the likes too. So
Now the dialogue, I actually a lot of times had me chuckling. The options where you're actually picking are well written. Like they feel more organic, but a lot of them are like super sassy and goofy that I'm like, oh, these are actually kind of funny. So, okay, real quick too, I think the character creator is kind of lame because I really wanted to make. I was very much basing my character off Danny DeVito's character Frank Reynolds in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So I was always just being real rude. Anytime there was an attack option, I always selected it because anyway, you're just gonna start blasting. And so
go walk in and start blasting.
Yeah, I just literally anytime there's an attack option. So hopefully there wasn't an orphanage looking for money and it gave me an attack option because I'm selecting it. but it actually did a lot of funny dialogue with me. Like anytime the god was just like, "I'm here to help you," and I would just be like, "Nah, but I'm trying to give you a gift. Nah, I'm good." That was literally my options. Like literally, I kept saying that, and it always made me laugh. And they're just like, "I'm trying to help you. Why won't you accept me? Fine," and they would just kick me out. It was so funny. It actually had me like chuckling a handful of times.
So you're like hindering yourself then, not getting
a
things?
little bit, yeah. And it just
denying help.
But this is what I like about this RPG is because I didn't feel bad doing it. It was a fun time.
The character creation was fine. You kind of have to make a hideous monster. Yeah. That's kind of like you really don't have much options around that. But you also don't see your character that much. Did any of you play third person at all?
A little bit.
I had zero interest in trying that. I like the first person. No, but even then, you're probably not. Person. Yeah, I don't want to see my ugly mushroom face, though. So I avoided that. Now, I don't know if this necessarily directs to the story entirely, but once you know this about the game, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. So again, this is going to be a negative, but again, if you're not really paying attention to it, you might miss it. So this game has been 7 years in development. I think 7 or 8. It's somewhere up there. This was originally supposed to be a like an MMO. Was originally its build, and at some point they changed directions in it. They decided to go with a much more traditional RPG. Have you noticed this, Andrew?
Yep.
That no NPCs move in this game. If you walk into a city or a town, they're all static, which is really normal in MMOs because all the characters are moving. So usually the NPC stands still, so they're not getting in the way. They don't really have any walking paths. It's such a weird thing. Once you notice it, you're like, gosh, it is a little strange that everybody's static in a position. They're moving, they're just not walking. And you're like, man, how do they not just add some walking paths after?
I didn't even put that together because there's one of the characters in particular, you like complete their side mission and then they're just in the city instead of being outside the city, and you don't see them move. They don't walk.
No.
And I put together. And again, this is probably more on the graphics, but you're talking about NPCs. There's like one female NPC model that just gets repeated. Like, I think I counted at least 5 times. It's the first time you see her, it's that Dehengen or something. You have to go save her from the lizard people. Yeah. And then she's like one of the shopkeepers. She's like,
I was a little confused by that. Because
all they do is they just slap a different hair model on her, and it's the exact same character model. I was like, what is happening right now?
Yeah,
I think I'm watching an Eddie Murphy movie, basically.
Yeah, it's a little strange. Like there are these weird hiccups that kind of stick out. But again, if somebody didn't point it out to me, I wouldn't have noticed it. Like I would have been fine. And it doesn't take it out of the game, but once you see it, you're like, gosh, none of these dang people are walking. They're just standing there or sitting there, and they're not doing anything. Just your companion's the only person that's moving with you. It's just a little weird. It does make me wonder, though, what the MMO would have looked like.
Yeah, I mean, even the quests feel very MMO-ish.
Yeah. Yeah, kinda. So it's strange because obviously some elements are probably left behind from that MMO, this being one of them. But it makes you wonder what other things.
It's almost like they were just like, how do we develop an end game that's like ongoing? I don't really know.
Well,
let's just wrap it up and call it an RPG instead.
This might explain the story a little bit. If this was 7 years in development, let's just assume 4 of those were built built with the intentions of this being an MMO. Before somebody comes in and says, listen, this ain't working. Let's switch it up. So now your storyline, your companions, all of that stuff probably has to be written in after the fact. So it might actually make sense why it ended up this way, where it just feels like it's missing things. It feels a little bit rushed at points. Like you said, meeting Marius is very much a just, hey, mate, I'm on your team now. Okay, welcome, idiot. So that's what I think is probably what you're seeing, is probably the tail end of this was trying to slap together a full-fledged single player narrative on top of the RPG that they were building. That's my guess.
No, it makes sense. And yeah, so I've heard that, and it does kind of feel like it. But I wanted to ask though, how did you guys play? Like, what were you aiming for?
Oh, straight magic.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
One of the things that I do need to praise this game for is I do think the combat feels great. Like, I don't hate the combat. I don't love the things you're fighting. There's not a lot of like interesting things that you're fighting, but using a wand feels great. I don't know if I've ever played a game that's felt as good using magic. I enjoy, comparing it to Skyrim, I enjoy this better than I did doing magic in Skyrim. I thought this was more fun.
Well,
Yeah.
it seems like there's just like a really like broad range of magical spells too.
Yeah.
Like having the different grimoires. And I think that was what I found fun, at least right on the outset of the magic, of like, it wasn't just about building a skill tree. Like you leveled them up and they, grimoires held certain sets of magic spells, but just being able to be like, all right, I'm going to hold these 4 spells or these 4 spells. And I'm not trying to fully piece together every single magic spell I want. I just kind of pick the book and go. And I don't know, maybe that changes as you get later into the game, but at least where I'm at, I like just being limited to whatever's in the book.
Yeah. So what did you guys do for like morality?
I didn't really get too far into that.
I mean, I tend to stay pretty positive. Good.
See, that's usually what I do too, and that's why I was like, I'm doing something different this time around. That's why I'm like attacking anytime it's an option.
But I don't think this is a full-fledged morality system here.
It's not, and that's what I like. One thing that I do think is good about this, of how it's accessible to everyone, because some games when you're doing an RPG, it's hard to be evil, because sometimes it's just so like there's no benefit of it. Case in point, one of my favorite games of Mass Effect, you're like 30 hours in, and there is a moment where it's like, if I go the evil route, I will straight up lose a companion. But if I go the good route, obviously I keep them. So it's like, well, why would I do the bad route? Like, I don't want to, like, it's a detriment. And so in this, it just was goofy and fun. And I didn't feel like anything was hindering me of like, oh, you clearly, if you save this guy, you're going to get some sort of reward. Or if you kill him, like, you're not going to get the reward. So it's just like, well, this is stupid. I guess I'll have to go good. And this, I was just like, just having fun. And also too, since it's a shorter RPG, most RPGs you're looking 80 plus hours. This you're looking like 34 to like 45 hours.
And that's like if you do completionist, right?
If you do completions, you're like 50 hours.
Okay.
But yeah, because of that, I don't feel bad doing these bad choices, because I'm like, oh, I didn't waste. I don't feel like, oh, I'm 50 hours in, and if I kill this person off, I'm going to cut a huge part of my story. It's going to completely change anything, and I'm never going to come back here because it takes so long. But this game, since it's shorter, I'm like, oh, I'm going to have fun with this. I'm going to do something different. So I mostly did pistols. I did a little bit of sword combat, but I was like, The pistols I thought are super easy. Like, they're kind of boring because there's not a lot going on with them. And the weird thing about the pistols, it consumes stamina, which doesn't really make much sense. Like, it's weird shooting pistols and hear my guy going, and it's like, little weird.
I mean, you got to do, I guess, have some negative effect.
Yeah.
Or you're just going to sit there just shooting pistols.
Or have one random ammo.
I know. It's obviously gameplay wise, it makes sense. But yeah, I agree. The combat in this game was a lot more fun. Like, I had a hard time at the beginning of this because I'm like, I'm getting a little bored, because like every RPG, it's a lot of exposition, talking, building up the story, collecting side quests. But then as soon as I started really playing the combat, I'm like, all right, this is fun. I'm having a good time.
See, that's where
Yeah.
I'm kind of stuck at, and that's where I'm not faulting the game for, because I'm like, I just know that I haven't fully broken into the full gameplay, but I just feel like I'm just doing a ton of like running around the city, and it's like finding, I was finding the Watcher forever, and just point A to point B in the city and doing all these things, and just that type of stuff gets boring to me in RPGs. I want to go out, I want to explore, I want to have all these side missions. Like I collected all of the side like bounty missions. Well, not all of them, I'm sure there's more, but I collected a handful of them. It's like I want to go out and do those, except the one I did try, I kept getting my butt handed to me, so I gave up on that one. But that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go do more of that type of stuff.
Now, speaking of all of that, because I like the combat. I think the combat's a lot of fun. I think we all kind of agree combat's pretty fun. Now, the other thing that's I don't know how I feel about this. I'm somewhere stuck on this one, but I notice some people talk about it like they really like it, and other people really hate it. What do you think about the enemies not respawning? Once you kill them, they're killed.
I like it a lot. When I first heard that, I'm like, I don't know about this, but then I'm like, I can walk around and I don't have to worry about fighting the same stupid slimes or whatever over and over and over again.
I
So I
thought
like it a
that was
lot.
the case. I wasn't 100% sure. It was like, maybe I'm just not remembering, or like maybe I'm walking through at nighttime or something. But I was like, I could have sworn there was an enemy here. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Once you wipe them out, they're gone. Which why I'm a little bit on the fence on it. Why I've kind of struggled with it a little bit. It kind of ties into the other element of this game that I feel like this is either a hit or miss for people is gear and how you enhance your gear. So to me, the leveling system, the progression system kind of takes a hit because of that a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if I love it. So we've obviously done an episode here on Game Pass Grab Bag for Diablo 4. And we obviously have a long history of Diablo series. We love the Diablo series. Now, on PC, I've been playing Path of Exile 2. It has a core component that is very different from Diablo in the sense that gear will drop, but it's very rare. Path of Exile 2 is so much more about getting materials to upgrade your gear. And it's about finding a nice set of gear and just building it and building it and building it. That's kind of what Avowed is.
Yeah.
It's less about the gear dropping. You'll find some good gear that drops, but it is way more about the materials and you upgrading that gear.
Gear never drops. You find gear in chests, but it'll never drop from an enemy.
Well, that's what I mean. You know what I mean.
Well, listeners don't.
Okay, fair. Okay, listeners, if you kill something, you ain't gonna get any gear from it. You're gonna find it from chests. So, but when you go to your camp, you can upgrade those things. Almost everything drops as a common, unless you're finding a rare one. I don't know if you move further on. Do you find drops that are okay? But the system is built less on that being important and way more about just upgrading the gear you like and the gear that you have, which you can upgrade it to higher ranks. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that system? Do you guys like that system? Because to me, that's where I would normally farm enemies for materials. I can't do that once they're dead.
Well, there's the other thing that I was thinking of too is it creates a little bit of a dead world, and there's a pretty good fast travel system. So I guess once you start to really explore everything and kill all these enemies so that you're kind of wiping it out, you're not going to be running through these dead lands anymore. But as long as there's enough materials, I think if it's like obviously maybe they don't give you enough to upgrade everything to its max level, but as long as there's enough that I can explore and it's not just like, all right, you got just enough to really focus on the one set of gear you get, and it's pretty scarce beyond that, because then it would annoy me. But I'm kind of with you that I would, and I think maybe it's just a Diablo thing, because even without the full upgrade, because the newer one, Diablo 4 has done a little bit of this where you upgrade your gear more, and so it is about farming, upgrade materials. If I really need them more, they don't give me enough of them, then I need enemies to respawn. but I think the fast travel makes up for it otherwise.
So I like it. So so you're right, Aaron. The leveling system is kind of pointless. You could be a level 20 character in the very first zone, and you could still be struggling with enemies. It all really depends on your gear. Your gear is what levels you up. And so the gear is set up in tier systems. So essentially, tier one, which is common, then uncommon, then it goes fine, superior, legendary. So think, and then you have little in between sections. So think of it like level 1.1, level 1.2, 0.3. Once you get to like 0.4 is when you upgrade it to a 2, a 2.1, a 2.2. And basically every zone you're in, the very first zone is a lot of commons. So you're getting the material to upgrade your common gun to a 1.1 and a 1.2. As soon as you go to the next area, more uncommon stuff is dropping. So essentially the tier 2 stuff is dropping. And so on and so forth. So that is the way they kind of hinder you. So you can't just keep fighting random mobs, leveling up, because it's all about the gear. You need to get the better gear. That's why I was kind of sprinting, because I'm like, oh, I'll just go to tier 2. I'll go to the second zone, start getting a bunch more tier 2 stuff. And if I want to come back to the first one and mop stuff up, I can. But I liked it because I never felt I was hindered. Because also too, so Keith, you said you were getting your butt whooped. I found this game to be very easy. I maybe died from an enemies twice, 3 times.
That's about where I'm at. I think I've died probably twice. I mean, there are some that will kind of wallop you, but or you really it's a matter of just kind of getting surrounded a little bit, especially when you're doing magic. There are some that you can get interrupted in, and I noticed that's where I was kind of getting myself killed because I personally loved my 2 flamethrower hands. I love just cooking people alive, but a bear would just smack you right out of that real quick. So like there were times where I was probably just like, oh, I could live through this, and I get hit, and then I'm like, oh, actually that really hurt.
Yeah, the bounty that was kicking this, and this was really where I was dying the most. It was this one bounty area where they had like pet bears. So there was like
so many bears in this game.
That's like every area.
Was it?
Yeah, it was just like bears. I feel
like
so many bears.
It was just a bunch of bandits and bears, and yeah, I kept fighting it too to my own detriment with 0 health potions. So it was kind of just like take a hit and then hope for the best. So I tried that 3 or 4 times, and then I just said I'll come back when I have at least some health potions, maybe level up my gear.
See, when it came to the combat, I like the companions. I felt like the companions are very helpful.
Yeah, they were actually really helpful in a lot of fights. You know, kind of being able to use their abilities as well in those fights, and they use them on their own on top of it. Yeah, I mean, I had no issues with that. Again, the combat was probably the least of my concern in this game. I had a lot of fun with it. Like, I think it felt pretty fluid. And I'm always a little nervous about first person, especially heavy melee style games. They can sometimes just not feel right. In fact, they almost always never feel right. They always feel really floaty to me. I always don't feel like I'm getting a nice crunch of a hit or something like that. But this one and the scale of that is actually pretty decent. So it's not an area that I have a whole lot of issues with. If I were to change one thing, I would, going back to kind of like the enemy just setup, I almost wish, so going back to Path of Exile 2 has a very similar system, again, where once you clear out an area, it remains cleared. You can go to the beginning of the instance, hold down A, and it says, do you want to reset this instance? And you can hit yes, boom, reloads it. I almost wish I had the option. Hey, reload my enemies here. Like, reload it. That way, I want to go farm a little bit. Let me go farm a little bit. Because it would be nice to feel like when I'm getting into zone 2 or zone 3,
but what would
that
you
I
be
have.
Farming?
Huh?
What would you be farming though?
Materials.
But enemies don't really drop materials.
No,
every once in a while, but not much.
I'm just saying if I had an option, that's what it would be.
Okay.
Where it gives me the ability to farm a little bit. So then maybe I have all my gear at a 1.3. So when I get into the next zone, because at this pace, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to get all of my gear maxed out before I'm going into zone 2. So I feel like I'm already going to go in there with a disadvantage where Just give me that opportunity. Give me the opportunity to farm it. However you wanted me to do that. My suggestion would just be reset the instance, allow me to go in there, farm materials.
So you say
Just
the combat you weren't concerned about. For me, like I agree with you, but I gotta say the thing that's so good about this game is the traversal and the exploration.
Yes.
Like,
ton of fun.
Getting a little bit late into it, but the art department did a fantastic job. And like this environment and world is great to explore. There's so many nooks and crannies, so many little treasures everywhere. I loved exploring in this game. And that's why I love that you didn't have to refight these monsters, because I want to go explore.
I understand why people like it, and that's why I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence. I like that too. I like the fact that I'm just not fighting the same crab spiders everywhere I go. Like I'm happy that I don't have to do that constantly. And you are also right. The exploration is awesome in this, almost to a detriment. The exploration is almost so good that I'm stuck looking in stupid corners, thinking something's hidden in every stinking corner. I like that though. I would much rather that be the case than knowing there's nothing behind there. Always leading me to believe that if I go over there, there's probably a chest sitting there waiting for me. But it makes me hang around the game so much longer, because instead of progressing, I'm looking behind that waterfall, because there's always something behind that waterfall.
Oh,
is that a rule in video games?
There has to be at least one waterfall, I think. In any video
it's
game.
not that there is a waterfall in a video game. There is obviously a waterfall in every video game. You cannot name one video game that doesn't have a waterfall. It has one, trust me. The question is there always something behind that waterfall?
There's not something behind every waterfall, but every game has to have a waterfall with something behind it, if you have a waterfall.
And you have to check. It is not an option. If you see the waterfall, you are going to go through that waterfall to see if there's something in there. And 9 times out of 10, there's something behind that waterfall.
I think it's funny, Liz, being our resident noob, has quickly learned that within our first year of gaming, where she was like, there's a waterfall, you got to check behind it.
That's video game 101. That's video game 101.
It is. But no, this exploration though is so good. So in the second world, you're dealing with a much more of the Dream Scourge. The Dream Scourge gets more and more relevant the farther you get in the game. And I was exploring because I had a treasure map, and I'm like, oh, what's going on? Sure enough, I look behind a waterfall, and I found a secret cave.
Check
and
those
I find
waterfalls.
some guys there, and they're like, hey, you're not supposed to be here. And they're like, you can leave and forget here. You have 2 options. They said copper or iron. Copper as in they bribe you, iron being attack. And me going, well, anytime there's an attack option,
you go in blasting.
I went in blasting, and I killed everybody. Come to find out, I noticed this after I saw an article where they were like, hey, in the second area, there's a hidden quest that if you do this, you prevent a massive, village burning. And I'm like, oh, okay.
So remember when you said hopefully there's not an orphanage that needs to be saved?
I completely did it by accident. And then, sure enough, the whole event played out. I was like, whoa, okay, that was kind of cool. So the exploration of this game, it really pays off. It's super fun.
Yeah, there's a ton of little mysteries. There's a ton of little mysteries, ton of little nooks and crannies. And that to me is if that's something you find fun, the only thing that's kind of like, if you think about it, most of the exploring let's take that your story as just like the exception, that was kind of a one-off. Most of the exploring you do, I don't think really pays off outside of that dopamine hit of opening a chest and getting a cabbage and a piece of cloth. Coins. Yeah, 5 coins. Because unfortunately, that's usually what you're finding when you're exploring, but you still kind of feel good just opening that chest and be like, yeah, I got it. So again, with the exception of obviously Andrew checking the waterfall like he should be doing and totally altering his game by making the wrong choice, the coolest choice.
It got me an achievement. So
it was the coolest choice.
It was.
but still, the exploring part of it does. It feels like a dense world with a lot of cool little things happening in little corners.
I'm still trying to figure out what happens with that girl and her Zarep friend. I found her friend back at the cabin, but I didn't want to get into a fight with him, so I left. So I figure I can go back again, and maybe I befriend him.
So
Try
actually, this
blasting,
actually
Keith.
Just start
so again,
blasting.
Andrew, you're a little bit further. So this isn't really a spoiler, just because this event is so small. But I want to know if it leads to something bigger. When you are in Paradise, there is this one section where a guard is hassling this girl with a cart. And she's like, I think there's contraband on there. Do you want to check to see if there's contraband? Do you remember this?
Yep.
Okay. I see the 2 grenades. I take the 2 grenades, but I lie and say
Yeah,
I
that's
didn't
what I
see
did
anything
too.
on it. So what happens with that?
Nothing. I
What?
don't as far as I've
I'm
seen
pretty
so
sure I
far,
defended a terrorist, and you're going to tell me nothing happens with this storyline?
No, not that I've seen. Well, there are rebels, which is funny. Another, once again, blasting is an awesome option. How far have you guys got in the first area? Have you beaten it?
No, I'm probably pretty close to the end, but again, I'm exploring every nook and cranny here.
So you find out these rebels. Oh, sorry, these are kind of spoilers, but it's nothing. I don't think crazy story because it's just small story segments. But you're like, oh, we think the rebels are hiding in a church. So sure enough, I go to the church and I'm talking, and she's of course like, yeah, well, what's the option? She's very much like, peace upon you guys, and I'm like, well, there's an attack option, so I'm gonna start blasting. my companions really like, all right, attacking with no evidence. Here we go.
So they call you out.
Yeah, luckily they weren't.
Oh, so you're a lunatic. blast! You're dead.
I think they just blind
Women and
follow
children
you,
just running, and you're just blasting them as they're trying to get out of the church.
See, this is what I've been loving about this game. I'm like, I didn't care. I'm like, this is a fun gameplay of just anytime I can attack, I'm going to attack.
I do appreciate that you just committed that fully to it, though, too. Just without question, just like attack. Okay.
He started this game with a mission, and that was be Danny DeVito. Just blast everything it gives you the option. If it gives you the option to start blasting it, just blast it. So I do commend you on being committed to that.
Thank you. It's been a fun journey. Oh man, yeah, the companions do like add a lot of flavor to it. Oh, because there was another side quest where you meet refugees, and they're like, "Oh, we ran from the mainland because we were actually criminals," and they're like, "Oh, don't tell them."
Yeah,
I find out they murdered somebody. I straight up went to the captain and went, "Hey, there's some criminals over there." And my companions got so mad at me. They're like, "I hope you enjoyed that. You got nothing out of that." And I was like, "Yeah, it kind of was fun."
Oh yeah, see, I helped them.
I did too.
Yeah, the dialogue. See, this is what I mean. The dialogue options are actually just really funny.
But
I didn't feel bad being bad in this game.
But yeah, I think
the issue there is, though, your companions don't actually change.
No, they don't.
Their feeling towards you. They might scold you a little bit, but that doesn't actually change how they interact with you moving forward. That, to me, again, when I talked about that connective tissue, that to me is Obsidian 101. That's Bethesda 101, which is your companions react to how you're handling things throughout the game, and that affects how they're going to treat you later, that affects how they're going to dialogue with you. Where that he can be like, man, that was really messed up that you did that, and then he's totally fine with you. Yeah. He's gonna you just blasted those people in the church for no reason, but I guess we're still pals. I think that part is missing, which sucks, but again, I don't think it destroys the game. I don't. I still think the game is a very good game.
Yeah. Man. But yeah, so if you play this, I recommend just go the blasting option. It sounds
fun. I almost regret that I didn't do that.
But yeah, I do wish there was a bit more of the morality system. Like I said, it doesn't.
It needed one.
I at least like that I do feel like there is a lot more consequence or benefit to your dialogue. There was a handful of times I got annoying. Like I said, I always loved being sassy to the god that was talking to me, which I hated anytime the god was talking to me.
Oh, it's the worst.
It just constantly talking in riddles, and it's just like
it
sounds
speaks
whiny.
in code.
Yeah, and it
Yep.
always sounds whiny and complaining. I'm like, so this is why I always avoided the camp to talk to your companions, because anytime you go to sleep, the god talks to you, and I'm just like, I don't care. But I'd always be sassy to the god, basically telling it to get out of my head, just let me go to sleep. And that always made me laugh because the guy would always just get like exacerbated with me, trying to help me. I'm just like, don't care.
Stop, man.
But yeah, I gotta say, yeah, as you said, the voice acting in this game is really good. They actually got a good, like you said, you had Garrus as like the main person, and so that's what was irritating me. I'm like, oh, this is Garrus. He even kind of has the feeling and the attitude as Garrus, but I just didn't care for his story of Kai's story. Same with Marius's. Marius got constantly like, oh, he's hiding pain, but I just wasn't interested. And then you get two magic casters eventually, and one of them is hers was a little more interesting. The other one is like a short cat lady. I forget what her name was. It's
Do you only keep 2 of them at a time?
Yes, you can only have 2 comedians at a time. But their story was okay. But yeah, just so far I just wasn't blown away by these companions.
Yeah, decent voice dialogue, but again, we've already gone through all that. I think that's just a symptom of a story that I don't think was completely fleshed out.
Yeah. And same with the music. Music was fine.
Yeah, nothing stood out. And that's kind of a bummer too, because I'm sorry, Andrew, I just have to do it. But when you're building a world like this, and because this is a beautiful game. Graphically, I think this game's beautiful. I think we all agree. Beautiful, beautiful looking game. But comparing it to Skyrim, which I didn't do a whole lot of, Skyrim has some absolutely iconic songs.
Yeah.
There are some songs on that soundtrack that stand alone. Like, if you did not know this was connected to a video game, you'd be like, this is a beautiful piece of art right here. You kind of have to marry that with a game like this. When you make a game this deep in fantasy and this beautiful, this is a beautiful looking game, just nail that. I want to walk into Paradise and this just swelling orchestra come in as soon as I walk in. That's what I want. I want that to just pop in my brain because I love that. To this day, some of my favorite soundtracks have been Battlefield games where their opening menus have been like, oh my goodness, this is an insane piece of art right here.
I don't know. Have you heard the new Call of Duty's theme song?
I muted that. I did not want that. So it is kind of a bummer. It's kind of you add it to the list. Like I said, there were going to be a lot of negatives here, but they weren't going to be game breakers for me. It's not a game breaker for me that it doesn't have this, but it's kind of a bummer. It should have had that. And there was a lot of good things here, but none of those things were groundbreaking that I hadn't seen before in a video game. And it's really pushed this genre forward. It's just one of those things you add to the list of, man, this should have had a killer soundtrack. Should have had it.
Well, you mentioned too, and I guess not to like hang everything on this one fact, but you mentioned the whole MMO thing and how these environments feel so much different. Like Paradise, it's like this refugee city. It's supposed to be overcrowded. It's supposed to be busy. It's supposed to be loud. Like you want to hear an environment of those sounds of markets and people yelling and sounds. It's dead. You kind of just walk around from one person to the next person, and it's lifeless. And and those are the types of sounds too that are really pull you into an environment. You walk in, it's not just the music. It's, do I feel like I'm in a bustling refugee city? No, it's beautiful as an environment, but that's about it. It doesn't feel like anything other than a city.
Of all the sounds, though, again, not great. I do love, and I wonder
the
if
panting
I'm
with
alone
the
on
pistols.
This. No, I like the your kind of incantations when you do spells.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I was a magic caster, so I do it.
What's odd to me is you don't have a voice in this game.
No, you do.
You can select.
You do when you cast spells.
No,
you do, but you don't talk.
when you jump from a high cliff, you go, oh, so
Yeah.
that's literally it. And I thought it was weird. Yeah, you got to pick your voice, but like that's it. It's just you yelling once in a while.
I don't, because obviously when you do a spell, it's like a Harry Potter thing. Like he yells something when he does the spell every time. And I don't think that's the voice that I selected, but I can't remember what I selected as in the voice selection. I can't. It is weird because it doesn't sound like what I imagine my voice should sound like, but I still like it. I still think it's a cool touch.
Yeah. But yeah, the art style though, getting the graphics though, this game is beautiful. Which also too, it runs great. Well, I actually want to do a quick segment, I guess, of bugs. But yeah, so I played on the Series S. The Series S, I think, only runs on at like a pseudo performance mode. So I think it's locked at 30 FPS. But on the Series X, you can have a quality mode or a performance mode, which it locks at 60 FPS. But I played a little bit in my Series X, and this game runs so smooth. Graphically, like I said, the art department nailed this game. I loved this environment. You know, you're obviously seeing a lot of mushrooms and stuff. There's just the color palette in this game is awesome.
Now I'm guessing you did. Did you do performance then or quality then when you played on your X? Since you're
I did
kind of used to
performance
you did
because
performance. 'Cause
quality.
that's
I noticed a frame rate drop a bit. And
yeah,
I, was like,
I like
don't like this.
I rarely notice frame rates, and I was like, this looks really really nice, but it was like it just feels slow. So I immediately went over to performance, and the graphics still look amazing.
Yeah.
The cutscenes in particular, like that first cutscene, is just absolutely gorgeous. Like the little rainbow skunk thing eating the mushrooms and
Yeah.
Yeah.
like that. The boat scene, that like we always joke about it, but water in games, and I know that's not actual gameplay water, but like that scene is just incredible graphics.
I mean, we're seeing Unreal Engine 5 kind of really start to hit its stride here. Obviously, it's still relatively new. So we've had a kind of slew of games that were kind of really kind of testing its limits. I know you guys played one of the earlier Unreal 5 games with the other Magic Casters, the Magic Casters Call of Duty game. I already forget the name of that one. What was that one called?
Yeah.
Yeah. that's a bad sign.
Immortals?
No.
Oh, Immortals of Avium.
Immortals of Avium, yes.
Yeah, Immortals of Avium. So that was one of the first Unreal Engine 5 games, I think, that came out.
Gosh, that could be such an awful story.
Yeah, but so we're starting to hit, I think, probably a good spot where I think people are starting to realize how far you can actually push it to make a game that looks that nice, that runs that smoothly.
Yeah.
Is really impressive. Yeah, I have no complaints. I think it was smart too. Do you remember I think this was like the beginning when they showed off the first announcement of this game. It wasn't any gameplay. Do you remember that?
Yep.
It was really dark.
Yeah.
Really dark, really gritty. So I think them changing that style and going with something a lot more softer, brighter, was a smarter move. I do think that was a right move. It doesn't match their Pillars of Eternity games that they're connected to, that I think are gritty and dark. But when you talk about accessibility, to me, this helps it again. This is kind of another plus for it, where it's much more inviting when you're looking at this game. And you just see those waterfalls and you're like, I got to look behind those waterfalls. So yeah, great looking game.
TLC does not approve.
Nice.
DLC.
Chasing waterfalls. I get it.
DLC, and I'm like, what
Hey,
do I have to do with it?
You know, Keith doesn't want no scrubs.
True.
But yeah, getting the achievements are good. There is a handful that are missable, but this is an RPG that's kind of easy to pick up again. Like there's an achievement to beat the game completely all over on the hardest difficulty. I do like two of the achievements were named after some of their previous games. One's called Grounded, obviously named after Grounded, where you kill so many beetles and scorpions. And then the other one was Alpha Strike Protocol, which obviously is based off of Alpha Protocol. But that was like assassinate people. But yeah, the achievements overall though are pretty nice. Like I said, there's a couple that are missable. Like the one I did of like killing that camp that was going to burn down a village was an achievement, and it's something that's super easily overlooked. So
Is it one that's like almost forced replay though? Like you get an achievement either way, and it's just you get the one dependent on the choice you make.
I don't think so. I think it was only the one option.
Because those ones I
It's kind of
hate.
lame.
Because those, I mean, I guess if there's already
Yeah, but it
an achievement to
forces
go
you
back-
into a decision that results in a bunch of people dying.
Well, I mean, I guess if the achievement, if you already have one built in where it's like replay it and beat it on the hardest difficulty, you're already forcing the replay, so you might as well have some of those achievements. But
The achievement should be just to find them. Make whatever decision you want to make. It shouldn't be tied to a
Yeah.
Andrew's negative decision on murdering these innocent people.
Andrew being a giant jerk about everything.
I mean, I also named my character Hugh Janus.
Nice.
Nice.
Which was also pretty funny because I'm reading letters and like, watch out for Hugh Janus. And I actually forgot that was my name. And I was like, wow, that's a goofy name. I was like, oh wait, yeah.
He's
that's right.
laughing every time he sees it. Hugh Janus.
Well, Keith it had a better name.
Yeah, I just went with penis. I just didn't even. Which was really great because then there's one dialogue you meet someone, also the same female character, just she's in a different environment and is a different name, but she's the same character model because that's all they have. But yeah, she addresses you, and the reply was your name in the flesh. So my reply was penis in the flesh.
Pure comedy.
I laughed
love
way
it to
harder
be
than I should have had.
But yeah, let's get our final thoughts here. So Avowed, as I said, this is probably my least favorite Obsidian game. It was more light on the RPG kind of elements for me, but I still had a blast. This game was still making me laugh. I had a fun time with the combat. I just wish the campaigns were a little more interesting. The story is picking up, so it's kind of a slow start, but I didn't care because I had fun with the combat. Of just once I started blasting, especially when I had the options to just start blasting, and I was picking every time. It's a good time. It's a good, exploration. This is something you can easily pick up and put down. You cannot play this game for a month, and I feel like you would still remember what you were doing, what the controls were, because everything's so well placed on the map of, hey, this is your objective. Do this thing. Forgot to mention, did you guys have any bugs?
No.
I think that sends out.
I thought I did, and then I was an idiot. And the problem wasn't the game, it was me.
So I at least had one. It was a bounty. Whenever you do, every zone has about 5 bounties you do. One of the bounties I killed, and you're supposed to collect something to turn that in for the bounty. It did not spawn for me. So since enemies don't respawn, I can't complete this bounty anymore. I killed the guy, and it's just not there. Like his body, I think, was in the
reset
ground.
the instance.
Yep.
No. Yeah, if only I could. But,
Sounds like my suggestion would have helped that.
but besides that, so now I will have this bounty I can never complete unless I start a new game. Overall, though, I haven't had any other issues. I saw some weird NPC model glitchiness, but that's about it. Yeah, the combat's a lot of fun, though. The environment is just awesome. The art team did a fantastic job. But yeah, for me, this is actually, I'll probably put this at like a 78.
Dang, I feel like that's lower than I was expecting you to go. I don't know what I was fully expecting, but just lower than I expected. But I really enjoyed it. I could see myself playing more. It's a good just something to kill some time, and I don't feel like I have to dedicate hours and hours at a whole time to play it to feel like I've accomplished anything or really just enjoyed my gameplay with it. I do think it's a little bit slow to start. That's where I'm kind of slogging my way through, but I think, or I can see where the game opens up. The magic looks fun. I was having fun with it already. Just a lot of different elements to it. So I don't know. I forgot about Skyrim. I don't think I played Skyrim actually.
Yeah, we covered it, Keith.
Well, there you go. I don't know when the last time I played Skyrim was. I don't remember how I even felt about it. But I had a lot of fun with this. I'd give it an 80.
All right. Yeah, kind of echoing my words from the beginning here. This does a lot of good things, but nothing amazing. It does some bad things, but nothing game breaking. It's It's a much more accessible version. I'm trying not to compare it to Skyrim, but it is a much more accessible version to Skyrim. I think this is one of those games that is. I'm glad that it is a staple that will live in the Game Pass collection. I don't think it's going to sell a lot of Game Pass subscriptions, but it's going to be one of those games that I think a lot of people will pick up, especially as time goes on. Because there aren't right now, there isn't really a lot of games like it.
Yeah.
And that's why when you compare it to Skyrim, you're kind of like, man, is that what else can you really compare it to? Because there is such a large gap on this type of RPG. And you want to know what the problem is everything's a live service now.
Yeah.
So these types of games, it's kind of crazy to think that this was supposed to be an MMO that reverted back to just a standard RPG. And then you realize that, oh, actually, that breed has kind of died a long time ago. That's why I think this game is actually still kind of special for that, just because it doesn't really exist anymore. So I'm glad that it's there. I'm glad that I played it. It's an accessible, fun game. The combat's there. That works. It's a beautiful looking game. Ultimately, it falling short of the target it probably should have hit. For that, I think I'm kind of with Andrew on this. I think it's a 78. I think that's a really fair score for it.
I mean, I think they already announced that the reception and the sales of it have been good enough that they're already looking for sequels or at least DLC.
It's Obsidian. They're a Microsoft studio, and from my understanding, it sounds like they've been very pleased with Obsidian. Obsidian's, what did they say? They've made 4 games in the last 5 years.
4 games. Yeah, their 4th one's coming out later. Outer Worlds 2. We have 4 games in 5 years. That's impressive.
They also claimed they're only have a studio of about 280 people, which is a fraction of the size. So I imagine Microsoft's feeling pretty good. If they're not paying a whole lot and they're getting a lot of content out of them, you probably feel pretty decent about them. Can I gripe on one thing real quick, just as a aside here? I hate in the video game world. I cannot stand this constant obsession with looking at Steam charts as a measure of success for a game. I cannot stand it. So the narrative here was this game is a failure because look at it on the Steam charts. I'm just saying right now, we obviously have Xboxes, but we also have, I have a PC. If I had a PC right now, and my option is spend $70 on Steam for this game, or go get Game Pass and just download it along with everything else, I'm getting Game Pass. Why is Steam charts the thing everyone is measuring this game's success on? It feels like the worst way to play this game is on Steam. You have that option if you want it. If you want to go pay for the game and you want to go play it on Steam, go ahead and do that. But to then sit there and say that this is the measure of its success is driving me nuts. I understand if the game is only on Steam and that's how you want to judge it, that makes sense, or that's the primary way that everyone's doing it. I don't think that's the primary way that everyone's playing this game. Cannot stand that. I've seen about 15 different YouTube videos that are like, it's totally tanking. Look at the Steam charts. Oh my gosh. I hate that so much.
Well, because even if you have a Steam Deck, you can just do Xbox.
Yes.
Cloud.
Literally buying it on Steam to me is probably the worst way to get access to this game. It's the most expensive way to get access to this game.
The only reason you're doing that is because you're just like, I just really love Steam and I would like to give them my money.
Okay, I will give it one. If there was one reason why you might get it on Steam is because if you wanted early access, you could do that through Steam. So maybe somebody
you could still do that on Xbox too.
You could still do that on Xbox. That's true. You could still do that with Game Pass. But whatever. Either way, I hate it so much. So much. It drives me crazy. And because again, it sounds like the studio's happy with its reception. They're happy with what they're getting out of it. My guess is that Microsoft is also feeling pretty good about that too, that this has been a pretty successful launch for them, because I'm going to guess 90% of the people playing this game are playing it on Game Pass.
Yeah. I do agree with you. It is kind of a weird thing of just a lot of people want a lot of games to fail.
Oh, that's
for the sake of failing.
I can't stand it. There is this obsession with games failing that it's driving me nuts. Like just you can enjoy a game And if you don't want to like it or you don't want to enjoy it, there's literally 15 million other games to go play right now. There are games launching constantly in different states. You want a live service game? It's there. You want to go pay $70 for a game? It's there. You want to pay $120 to play Civilization 7 early? You can do that. There are so many options out there. It's okay to just say, this one ain't for me, and move on from it. I do not understand this obsession with needing to see something fail. It's constant. It does not stop. Right now, according to video games, the only game that is successful is Marvel Rivals. It's the only one that seems to be doing fine on Steam charts. Everything else has fallen off. It's so annoying.
There should be a Game Pass chart. I agree.
No, I don't know. No, I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't need a Game Pass chart. I don't care because once it's on Game Pass, it's especially if it's a Microsoft Studio, it's staying there. So I don't care.
Isn't that where they pull like active player numbers and stuff from too?
Or does that come from different? For what? Steam?
Yeah, like they just
Steam's the only one that's public. So it's the only way. I understand that where, if you're doing journalism, it's probably the only metric you've got access to. You can pull up Steam right now. You can look at the Steam charts. So I kind of understand that, but it just drives me crazy that there is this constant narrative, and especially on a game launching on Game Pass in Microsoft Studios. I think the dumbest thing you can do is go to the Steam charts and try and glean some piece of information out of it. The dumbest thing, because they were literally comparing this on Steam to Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 that didn't launch on Game Pass. So if you wanted to play that game, you got it through Steam. If you wanted to play Avowed, you would get it through Game Pass. It was the cheapest route to go get it, and you had access to it immediately on top of everything else. I cannot believe people are comparing these two as if this was an easy comparison to make. Stupid.
And I suspect there's a good chance if you have a PC capable of playing most games, you probably already have Game Pass.
That's my point. Even if I didn't have Game Pass, but I wanted to play Avowed, and I had the option to pay $70 on Steam, or what is it, $15 to go get it?
If you do just PC alone, I think it's like $10.
Oh, that's right. You don't have to get Ultimate. Yeah. Oh, perfect. So I'm paying $10. If those are my two options right now, which one am I picking? Look at the Steam charts. Of course, the Steam charts are going to look like that. No one would pick that option. No one should be picking that option. Unless you truly wanted to support the studio. I don't want to sit there and say Obsidian doesn't deserve the $70. But on a consumer side, you're always going to try and pick the cheaper, more efficient option. And that's going to be Game Pass here by a mile.
And bringing in those Game Pass subscriptions is exactly what Xbox and Game Pass want. So even if you're doing that, you're more than successful by their accounts. That's
100% what they want. What they want is those signups, and they want you to stick around. They want you to go, dang, look how much is in here. And then they're going to stick around for it. That's what they want. That's why you want to bolster up. It's the same thing Netflix did. They're following Netflix's model to the T right now, which is try and load up on as much content that you can keep on your platform so that anytime somebody comes in to check out a game, they realize there's so much more sitting in here. They're going to stick around. That's the game here.
But the one slight defending of the Steam charts, I do agree with you, Aaron, is it's still quite uncertain. It's still quite uncertain how much a studio makes when people play the game. So yes, you could look at those Steam charts and be like, well, this is actual money that the game has made, as opposed to what they're making off Game Pass.
My guess, and this is just my guess is that most of these deals are an upfront deal. They're not a deal on how many plays you get. My guess is that Obsidian
is a bit different because it's a Microsoft studio.
It's a Microsoft studio. So Microsoft probably just has a budget for them for their game. And then they probably look at how many people have played it on Game Pass and said, okay, that was a successful investment that brought in enough attention and enough eyes here because we want to keep people on this platform. That's probably how these deals work. They probably don't work on, okay, you had 1.6 million people play your game. Here's your check for 1.6 million users. I don't think it really works that way. That's going to be my guess, is that it's much more of they're tracking how many people are sticking around that play these games. But again, for some reason, the narrative is that we got to look at the Steam charts. I can't stand it.
Yeah, I agree. Good rate, Aaron.
Sorry. You kind of mentioned, I don't even know what you mentioned, but you said something that really triggered me, and I had to get that off my chest.
But yeah, this is once again, even with Eternal Strands last week, this is a game where I'm like, I would love a sequel. I think a sequel will be way better.
Yes, I would agree.
Is getting free DLC. They're getting free LC.
The idea that they would make a game to this that they weren't making an MMO for, so this was always going to be built as a narrative game, I would imagine a sequel to this would be outstanding.
Yeah. All right, but let's wrap it up here. So thank you all so much for joining us. I've been your hardcore gamer host, Andrew. You can find me next week's live at Firebird0952. Thank you all who join us. Go to our YouTube, our Twitter, all our stuff. Go to GamePassGrabBag.com. You'll find the links to all our stuff. Come to our live recordings. We do every Wednesday around 8:30, 9 o'clock EST. Always love talking to people. Thank you, Javier. Nerd Talk Plus. Always joining. But yeah. Aaron, go ahead. What do you stream?
Okay. Yeah. So, hey, sometimes I stream on the Game Pass Grab Bag channel on YouTube. So please, we are looking to grow that channel. So go ahead and subscribe. If you have not, that would be greatly appreciated. And yeah, you might see me there.
Yeah, you've been doing Marvel Rivals, and I've done a Phasmophobia. Plan on doing some more.
Yeah, Aaron's great. I've been inspired with my Marvel Rivals gameplay. Playing a lot of Rocket Raccoon.
I'm basically coaching Keith. Yeah.
Yep. And got to do something during work, so I watch Aaron play Marvel Rivals. It's a good time. Your shirt, it's I don't know.
Oh, yeah, you got it. It says Carly Cosgrove.
Okay, so that's like an iCarly Marin.
Yeah, Bigfoot Sporting Club. Yeah, Carly Cosgrove is obviously
I assume a band.
It is a band. Yeah, a lot of fun. You might enjoy them. Check them out.
Okay, good times. All right, that's all. I'm Keith.
All right, everyone. We love you all. We'll see you again next week.
Bye. Show me the Steam charts.